Hello, everyone. I am Israel Wayne, Vice President of the Michigan Christian Homeschool Network, otherwise known as MiCHN. We are the official state organization for homeschooling within the state of Michigan. And I want to talk with you about the law regarding homeschooling. There are a couple of different options that we want you to be able to consider. Michigan has a great reputation of being one of the freest states in the United States to be able to teach your children with the lowest amount of regulation. And so we're excited about that. That's something that our organization, MiCHN, has helped to develop over the decades since 1984 and seeks to continually maintain. We represent homeschoolers in the state house and work with the legislature to make sure that homeschooling remains free and legal within our state. So when we think about homeschooling here in Michigan, we should remember that homeschooling wasn't always free and open within our state. If you go back into the 1980s, it was actually one of the most regulated states and restrictive states. But thanks to some wonderful families and homeschooling advocates like the DeYoung family, the Bennett family, the Clonlara school, and others who fought legal battles in the 80s and into the 90s, we thankfully were able to develop a wonderful homeschooling law here that allows families to be able to teach their own children without undue regulation. So we're going to go over some of those options here with you so that you can know what your options are. Now, if you're just looking into homeschooling, you don't necessarily have to nail down exactly which of the homeschooling options you want to choose before you start, because you're not required to report your homeschooling to the Michigan Department of Education or to your local school district. You don't necessarily have to make up your mind as to which group or which category you're going to homeschool under until one of them specifically requests that information. You have some time on to make up that decision. But at any rate, we do want to discuss what those options are here so that you can be informed. Now, we'll run a disclaimer here and say that we are not a legal organization, so the information here should not be based as or understood as giving legal advice. If you want specific legal advice, we recommend that you become a member of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, hslda.org. They're a wonderful organization that we work in tandem with. And if you become an annual member with them, they will provide you with legal counsel and representation. So you can get specific legal counsel from hslda.org, or you can hire your own private legal counsel as well. So one of the things we have to understand first before we talk about homeschooling laws, that there is something called the compulsory attendance laws that every state has, and Michigan has them as well. And this basically provides an expectation that your children are going to be in public school unless there's some special circumstance or situation that exempts them. Michigan does have a couple of exemptions. The compulsory attendance age range in Michigan is from the age of 6 until the child's 16th birthday. So children younger than 6 don't have to attend any kind of school, and students over 16 don't need to attend any kind of school whatsoever. But children within that age bracket are expected to be in a public school unless they're otherwise exempted. Now, one of the exemptions to public school is what we call in the Michigan statute, the educational statute, we call Exemption A. Let me just read that to you. It says the child is attending regularly and is being taught in a state-approved non-public school, which teaches subjects comparable to those taught in the public schools to children of corresponding age and grade, as determined by the course of study for the public schools of the district wherein the non-public school is located. What we tend to think of when we think of non-public schools is typically what we call private schools. So if your child is enrolled in a private school, they are obviously going to be exempted then from attendance in a public school. There is a homeschool connection to this, which we will explain soon. The main homeschooling law, which we have had really since the mid-1990s, is what we call Exemption F. This is the category where most families fall, most homeschooling families in Michigan choose to homeschool under exemption F because it's significantly easier than exemption A. So let me just read this to you specifically. This is what the law states. Quote, the child is being educated at the child's home by his or her parent or legal guardian in an organized educational program in the subject areas of reading, spelling, mathematics, science, history, civics, literature, writing, and English grammar, end quote. So that is exemption F. And so then it goes on to state, quote, exemption from the requirement to attend the public school may exist under either subsection 3A, which we read, that's the non-public schools, or F, this is the specific homeschool exemption, or both, for a child being educated at the child's home by his or her parent or legal guardian, end quote. So what you need to do in order to start homeschooling is simply, under exemption F, is to simply create an organized educational program, and you have to teach your children these 9 subjects that are required by law. Now you say, well, what does an organized educational program look like? That is a little bit subjective. Certainly, if you ended up in a court, you would have to demonstrate to them that you have an organized educational program. So having some specific homeschooling textbooks or books that are related to these issues, doing some record keeping, those things will help you substantively in demonstrating that you are in compliance with the law in Michigan. So again, you are not required to report to any school official. You do not have to ask permission to homeschool. You don't need to get a license. You don't need to get a permit. If you are sent a non-public school membership reporting form, you do not have to register with the state by returning it or making any type of response. Now, there are times where your local school district may ask you to sign papers to withdraw your student from that school, saying that you plan to homeschool. We would actually encourage you, again, this is not legal advice, but we would actually encourage you, if you do that, to simply give them a notice that you are withdrawing your student from the school. It is not legally a requirement for you to tell them what school your child will be going to. You could choose a private school, you could choose homeschooling, you could start one program and switch to another. It's really not your legal requirement to tell them where you are homeschooling or exactly what you are doing, what kind of schooling you're providing for your child. But in some cases, it seems like for their paperwork, if you don't give them a notice that you are withdrawing your student from the school, then they have a hard time with closure, and you may end up having a truancy officer show up at your house. And so sometimes it actually can create more problems if you never give them a notice of intent to withdraw your student. So again, you can get specific legal counsel from HSLDA or your own personal attorney regarding that. But we do encourage you, if you want to have the least amount of issues with your local school district, if you give them a notification, this is only if your student is already enrolled in the school. If they haven't started school, then you don't need to do anything. Like if they're a preschooler and you just start homeschooling them from the beginning, you don't need to report to anyone. You don't need to file anything. You don't have to fill out any forms. You don't have to get a license. You don't have to do anything. You just start homeschooling your child. But if your child is enrolled in public school, then for the least amount of hassle, you can inform them that you are withdrawing your child from the school. And again, you don't have to tell them what your decision is, or if you're going to be homeschooling or put them in a private school. That's really none of their business. So that's not something you're legally required to do. So then under exemption F, the Michigan Department of Education has stated, quote, if the homeschool family has not registered, the department will consider the homeschool family to be operating under the exemption F solely. So they're going to assume if you are not registered or enrolled as a public school student within the public school or enrolled in a private school somewhere, that you are homeschooling under exemption F. So that really is going to be kind of their assumed default of what you are doing. So again, you don't have an obligation to provide information about your homeschooling. You don't have to be standardized tested in Michigan. You don't have to do any annual reports. In some states, you have to notify your local school district every year. Yes, we're intending to homeschool again this year. You don't have to do that in Michigan. There's no annual reporting. There's no standardized testing. Again, we are a very low regulation state, and we're very thankful for that, and we would like to keep it that way. Now, there is another option, and that is that you can actually form a non-public school for your homeschool. And some people do this, but there are more regulations that go along with that. So one of the downsides to doing that is that you will have to meet certain requirements, particularly like sanitation laws, and such that a school building would have to meet those standards. You could be expected to meet those standards within your own home, and some of that may require inspections and things like that. So those are things that would be difficult. You also generally are expected to have a teaching certificate in order to be teaching your children in a non-public school at home. And so for the average parent who is not certified as a certified teacher, this will not be an option that most of them would want to pursue. And that actually was one of the court cases, that was the Bennett case, actually, and the DeYoung case, both, I believe, dealt with this issue of teacher certification. And so that's how we ended up with exemption F, because prior to that, in the 1980s, you could homeschool as a non-public school. But if you weren't a certified teacher, then it made it very difficult for you to be able to do that. So it also says that in order for you to be homeschooling in a non-public school, you have to submit to an examination for its sanitary condition, the records of enrollment of the pupils, and of its courses of studies, and the qualifications of its teacher. So there's a lot more regulation, there's a lot more oversight for you under exemption A. So for the most part, we here at MiCHN encourage homeschooling families to homeschool under exemption F, and we encourage you to know your rights. We have a FAQ page on our website that tells you what the Michigan law is. You can go there and print it out, have it with you in case anyone asks you about it. You can show them the law. You'd be surprised, but sometimes even public school officials are ignorant about what the homeschooling law in Michigan is, and sometimes they think it's something different than what it is. And they sometimes will tell families, oh, you need to report annually, or we need to see the curriculum that you use, or you're going to have your child tested. Those things are not true. The Michigan law does not state those things, but sometimes, you know, well-meaning people who work for public schools think that that's in the law for some reason. So you need to know for yourself as a homeschooling family what the law actually says, and know what your rights are, and be able to stand on your rights. So again, we encourage you to go to our website, which is MiCHN.org, MiCHN.org, or just homeschoolmichigan.org, if you can remember that, homeschoolmichigan.org. And feel free to contact us. We have a Facebook page. We have a Facebook discussion group. We would love to have you join us at those different platforms. And if you have any questions regarding homeschooling, please don't hesitate to contact us. That's why we're here. We want to help you to be successful. God bless you.